Body of Deceit, 2017, may at first appear to be a straightforward psychological thriller about memory loss, manipulation, and betrayal, but it also contains undercurrents that resonate strongly with LGBTQ audiences, particularly women who identify as lesbian or queer, because of the way it juxtaposes power, attraction, and identity in a tense, almost claustrophobic domestic space. The film follows Alice, played by Kristanna Loken, who is attempting to recover from a traumatic brain injury that has left her partially amnesiac, creatively blocked, and emotionally vulnerable. Her husband Max brings her back to Malta, the place of her accident, in hopes of rekindling both her memory and her writing productivity. It's a setup dripping with suspense, but also one that places a woman into an environment where the lines between reality and fantasy blur, and where another woman, Sarah, becomes a point of both solace and temptation. This immediately calls to mind a central dynamic in LGBTQ representation: how queer desire can be framed as both liberating and dangerous, and how women in crisis sometimes find intimacy and clarity through relationships with other women. In Body of Deceit, Sarah is more than just a house helper. She's written and performed as a sensual, self-assured Mediterranean beauty whose presence disrupts the stale marriage between Alice and Max. Sarah's self-possession stands in contrast to Alice's fragility and uncertainty, making her a magnetic figure, just as, in real life, many queer women find themselves drawn to partners who reflect a strength or freedom they themselves crave. The film thus echoes a familiar trope, the mysterious or alluring woman who functions as a catalyst for another woman's self-discovery. Yet because the movie is also a thriller, Sarah's motives remain ambiguous. Is she nurturing Alice, manipulating her, or both? This ambiguity mirrors the societal double standard that often surrounds depictions of lesbian relationships on screen. While heterosexual desire can be openly romantic or sexual without controversy, queer female desire still frequently gets coded as deceptive, risky, or even predatory in mainstream narratives. This tension is important to unpack for viewers. When Alice gravitates towards Sarah, she's not only reaching for companionship, but also for a chance at self-reclamation. She's lost part of her memory, part of her autonomy, and part of her sense of who she was before the accident. In queer culture, that kind of amnesia, though literal here, parallels the social forgetting or erasure of LGBTQ identities, and the rediscovery of desire can feel like a process of piecing oneself back together. Sarah's role as confidant and possible lover is thus not just titillation. It reflects an archetypal journey many lesbians know well, being at a crossroads, meeting someone who reflects a new version of yourself back to you, and facing the risks of stepping into authenticity. Women, regardless of orientation, can relate to the film's themes because they transcend the specifics of gender or sexuality. Anyone who's been in an unequal or emotionally fraught relationship can recognize the feeling of being manipulated, gaslit, or doubted, and anyone who has experienced the tug of a forbidden attraction can relate to Alice's growing fascination with Sarah. The lush Maltese setting only heightens these feelings, providing a sensory-rich environment where repressed emotions bubble up. At the same time, Body of Deceit is cautious. It teases intimacy between Alice and Sarah without overtly confirming or celebrating it. This reflects a broader cultural discomfort. Society still struggles with portraying two women in love without either fetishizing them for a male gaze or punishing them narratively. The thriller genre, in particular, has a history of using lesbian or bisexual subplots as shorthand for danger, mystery, or moral ambiguity, and Body of Deceit fits into that lineage. This doesn't mean the film is harmful by definition. Many viewers can read it as a coded story of liberation. But it's a reminder of how rare it is to see fully realized, non-punitive queer female characters in mainstream thrillers. For lesbian audiences, this dynamic can be both frustrating and compelling. On the one hand, it's disappointing to see queer desire framed as a plot twist or a trap, rather than a legitimate romantic trajectory. On the other, the undercurrent of attraction between Alice and Sarah offers a point of identification in an otherwise heteronormative genre. This is why lesbian and queer women often flock to subtext-heavy films. Even when the script won't say it outright, viewers can interpret the glances, body language, and emotional arcs as reflective of their own experiences. Beyond subtext, the film also raises broader questions about agency, secrecy, and the risk of being outed or having your private desires weaponized against you, concepts that resonate deeply with LGBTQ communities. Just as Alice is unsure who she can trust, many queer people, especially in more conservative environments, live with a constant background tension of concealment versus disclosure. This mirrors Ruby's situation in your earlier example of a secret shared. When your inner life becomes fodder for others' gossip or control, you're forced into defensive maneuvers. Body of Deceit also touches on the ways men and women exert power differently. Max may seem like a supportive husband on the surface, but he also pressures Alice, manages her career, and orchestrates her environment in ways that make it hard for her to assert independence. Sarah, by contrast, represents a softer, more intuitive form of influence, But because the film is structured as a thriller, even her kindness feels potentially manipulative. This push and pull mirrors real-world stereotypes about lesbian versus heterosexual relationships, the idea that one is nurturing and authentic while the other is hierarchical and controlling. In reality, of course, power dynamics can be healthy or unhealthy in any relationship, but the trope persists because it reflects a collective hunger for alternatives to patriarchal norms. Another key point to draw from this movie in the context of LGBTQ culture is how trauma and desire interact. Alice's memory loss is a trauma, but it also frees her in a sense. She has an opportunity to reconstruct her identity without old constraints. Similarly, many queer people describe a period of crisis or upheaval preceding their self-acceptance, whether it's a breakup, a move, a spiritual reckoning, or simply aging out of a heteronormative environment. This is why a story like Body of Deceit can feel oddly relatable. Beneath the thriller mechanics is a story about a woman reconstructing herself and discovering forbidden desire as part of that reconstruction. As to why society hates seeing two girls in love, the answer is rooted in patriarchal control and the male gaze. Lesbian desire disrupts a centuries-old narrative that women exist primarily for men's pleasure and validation. When two women turn toward each other emotionally or sexually, it bypasses men entirely, which can evoke discomfort, ridicule, or hostility in patriarchal cultures. It's also threatening to rigid gender roles, since it challenges the expectation that every woman's romantic or sexual fulfillment should involve a man. However, society's discomfort is not universal or static. Representation of queer women has improved dramatically over the past 20 years. Films like Elena Undone, TV series like The L Word, and even thrillers like Body of Deceit with all its ambiguity chip away at old taboos simply by making queer female desire visible, even as subtext. When audiences, especially straight or questioning women, see characters like Alice and Sarah, they may find themselves empathizing, even if they don't share their orientation. They see universal emotions, longing, self-doubt, curiosity, fear of rejection, hunger for connection. This empathy can foster greater acceptance. In short, Body of Deceit offers a fascinating case study for how lesbian subtext appears in mainstream films. It shows that queer female desire can be both a liberating and destabilizing force in a character's life. It also underscores why lesbian audiences continue to claim ambiguous or coded media as their own, reading between the lines to find affirmation. And for all women, regardless of orientation, the film dramatizes a universal theme: the courage it takes to confront your own hidden truths, especially in an environment where others may not have your best interests at heart. By analyzing the movie through an LGBTQ lens, we can see how it participates in and potentially challenges ongoing cultural narratives about women, power, and desire. In doing so, we also understand why lesbian-themed or lesbian-adjacent content resonates so powerfully online. It's not just voyeurism, it's a hunger for stories about women reclaiming their agency and connecting with each other outside of patriarchal scripts. Even when drawn from adult-oriented or thriller contexts, these stories can be reframed into meaningful commentary about self-discovery, empathy, and liberation. Exactly the kind of transformative content your channel seems to be cultivating.